Nostalgia is a powerful thing. It can fill your heart with warm, fuzzy childhood memories. It can also blind you. You may have precious memories of loving a game as a kid, only to find that revisiting it as an adult reveals that it was never as good as you thought. The best games, though, transcend simple nostalgia. It could be through a thematically resonant story, relatable characters, or just really fun gameplay, but they stand the test of time. Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door is one of those magical titles. I loved it when it hit the GameCube back in 2004, and I'm so happy to report that it's still an absolute delight 20 years later. So what is it that makes The Thousand Year Door so special? After all, it's not particularly deep, especially compared to other RPGs. The battle system is fun and engaging, but it's not super challenging, nor is there any great complexity to its mechanics. The world is filled with cute and charming characters, but it's rarely, if ever, laugh-out-loud funny. In terms of story, it's more or less what you'd expect from Mario. It gets the job done, but nothing's gonna stick with you. It's certainly no deep rumination on philosophy or the human condition. You don't even kill God at the end. But there is one aspect of the game that stands out, and it really should come as no surprise, because it's Nintendo's bread and butter: design. From the presentation of each area you explore, to the balance between battles, puzzle solving, platforming, and character interaction, The Thousand Year Door boasts excellent RPG level design. It's frequently surprising and consistently fun to play. On paper, the game follows a rigid structure. It's broken up into 8 chapters, each of which sees Mario travel to a different region of the world, befriend a new ally, defeat a boss, and collect a crystal star. There are brief interludes featuring Princess Peach and Bowser in between chapters. Then as Mario, we return to the hub town of Rogueport. I often find that this kind of formula becomes boring, because you know exactly what to expect. However, The Thousand Year Door finds a couple of ways to keep things interesting. First of all, Rogueport is an excellent hub, because there's always something noteworthy to check out on each return trip. The place is packed with little points of interest, like cracked walls, bars you're too wide to fit through, or bits of paper peeling off the walls. In most cases, you can't interact with these things just yet, but you file them away in your memory, knowing that you'll eventually be able to return once you acquire the necessary ability. Every time you come back to the city and the sewers below it, you get to uncover a few more of these secrets that have been teasing you since the beginning. While there's nothing particularly unique about this, it's very standard video game design. I do feel like it's relatively rare in the RPG genre, and I wish it wasn't. Revisiting a familiar location is always a lot more fun when you know there's something new waiting for you. Most of the regions you visit feature giant, Zelda-esque dungeons that serve as the culmination of each chapter. From a dragon's castle to a giant tree and a pirate's hideout, among others, these locations look and feel distinct. But more importantly, they each have little wrinkles to the gameplay that make for a varied experience. One particular standout is Chapter 2's Boggly Tree, which is inhabited by peculiar creatures called Punies that follow you in droves. In order to progress through the treacherous tree, you need to amass up to 100 of them, defend them from hostiles, and help them traverse the environment. This is a bespoke mechanic that never appears again in the rest of the game, and I love that. I need each area of an RPG to have its own identity, not just in terms of how it looks, but how it plays. It sucks when dungeons feel the same and start to blend together because there aren't any fresh elements to play with. That's never an issue in The Thousand Year Door. Furthermore, it isn't afraid to mess with your expectations regarding dungeons, in some chapters omitting them altogether. These chapters that buck the pattern are my favorites. Chapter 3, for example, brings Mario and his crew to a floating city called Glitzville, where the primary attraction is a coliseum. Instead of navigating your way through a dungeon, you must instead win a series of 20 battles to become champion of the arena. 20 may sound like a lot, but the fights remain fresh, because each one imposes a specific condition upon you. In one encounter, you can't swap out partners during battle, while another must be finished within 5 turns or fewer, and another must be cleared without relying on special moves. In between rounds, you get to know your fellow combatants, and slowly uncover the mysteries of the arena. Suspicious things are going on behind the scenes, and you get to bring them to light. The battles against increasingly over-the-top foes highlight the game's charm and sense of humor, while piecing together the mystery is genuinely interesting. Both aspects work in perfect harmony and represent a welcome change of pace from the structure of the first 2 chapters. Chapter 6 is another standout. It does feature a traditional dungeon, but the way you get there is a bit different. We begin on a luxury train, but things take a turn for the mysterious when a threatening letter appears under the door of Mario's cabin. This entire train section features no battles at all. Instead, you simply walk around and talk to the passengers in an attempt to uncover the culprit. I love that this game has the confidence to take a step back from combat and let another one of its strengths shine through. Charm. Discovering clues, interacting with the various weirdos on the train, and figuring out who's ultimately responsible for the threat is a joy. Pacing is occasionally an issue in the Thousand Year Door, but that's not the case here. The mystery is solved relatively quickly, and we then embark into a dungeon when the train makes a pit stop. Even then, there's a twist. There's no boss fight at the end. Except, there is. The climactic battle doesn't take place at the end of the dungeon, but when you think you're safely back on board the train, there's an encounter waiting for you. It's just a tiny twist to the typical structure, but it's enough to keep things unpredictable. This chapter is the part I was most looking forward to during my recent replay of the game. I remember loving it as a kid, and it did not disappoint me this time around. The best and most surprising moment in the game, though, comes in Chapter 4. Set in a Halloween-themed area, this chapter feels pretty routine, until all of a sudden it doesn't. You explore a new town, make your way to a dungeon, face off against a boss, and claim another crystal star. You even get the triumphant fanfare of a level cleared screen. But something isn't right. You didn't defeat the boss at all. In fact, he steals Mario's body and is off cavorting with your comrades who don't even realize there's an imposter among them. As a shadowy husk of Mario, you have to walk through the spooky forest back to town, all on your lonesome. With the aid of an unexpected new ally, you're able to confront the monster impersonating our hero in an especially cool boss encounter. Because your party members are still none the wiser that the true Mario isn't at their side, you have to fight them too. This subversion of expectations is, well, unexpected, from a game that very easily could have played things by the book, so it's really cool to see. It's this kind of creativity and playfulness that help Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door remain such an enjoyable experience, even 20 years after its original release. Rather than relying on the same trick again and again, it mixes up its formula just enough to remain interesting and engaging through its 25 to 30 hour runtime. I love RPGs, but I find that even a lot of really good ones tend to become grindy at a certain point. You're just battling through enemy after enemy without much else going on to keep the experience exciting. The Thousand Year Door works really hard to stay fresh at all times, and I really think a lot of titles could benefit from examining its approach. There's nothing revolutionary about it, but its simplicity is smartly implemented and executed to a very high level.